Welcome to the video lecture series Culture, Worldview, and Origins. We're now entering the third phase of this video lecture series. We have expounded or did the lectures on culture and how culture influences how we think, how we perceive, how we act, how we even process information, and how culture can really be a factor, a force in making us who we are, and in not determining, but in molding us and shaping us in different ways. That's why when we have cross-cultural experiences, we are immediately hit with, there's a difference here. These people have a different grid, they have a different view, they have a different thought process, and that is where we can understand that we have a lack of understanding their processes. And that was my experience being a cross-cultural educator in one situation where the experience was just difficult, and I just felt I had a difficult time communicating because of the 21 points of differences within the Western, non-Western type of cultural bringing up or thinking patterns. Then from culture, we went on to worldview, and we developed the concept of worldview within its Welt concepts that the Germans had developed in their philosophy a couple hundred years ago. And so worldview is one of three concepts that they developed, where the first one was the Weltbild, which was the world picture, which includes all the influences of growing up, of our years of our environment, our schooling, our belief system, and everything formed a picture of the world, and that's the Weltbild. And then when we take that picture and we start looking out at the world through that picture, then that becomes for them a Weltanschauung, which is a worldview. You're actively viewing the world through this picture that was formed through your subconscious and conscious choices. Then we compared the concept of viewing to the concept of philosophy, and how the two corresponded and correlated to each other, and how it seems that the viewing and the world viewing system seems to have come from maybe a non-Western type of framework, whereas philosophy comes from a more auditory, a more word-based type of study program. That would be philosophy, and theory is what we came across on that. Now we're taking those two concepts, of culture and worldview, and applying it to origins. And that's what brings us to today, is the origins of scientific models. And what we're starting with is the Western perspective, and this is the first of six. So the origins of scientific models, that's what we're now entering that phase. What this series has been built on is a quote by Stephen Jay Gould, and I have a graphic here of how that quote fits into what we're looking at. But he had said, "First, facts do not come to us as objective items, seen in the same unambiguous way by all reasonable people." So all reasonable people, he said, did not see things the same way. They had a different way of seeing things. And then he lists four factors of how and why we see things differently. And he listed theory, habit, prejudice, and culture all influence the facts we choose to observe and the way in which we perceive them. So what we've done is we've taken those four factors, culture, prejudice, theory, and habit, and have accommodated them to the structure of the house that we're building, that is a diagram, a schematic of the flow of thought, how we build our thought processes, and how philosophy and and the Welt concepts work together to build a sequential, now this is Western, a sequential thought process that starts at the bottom level of culture. And culture is all the dynamics that influence our subconscious formation. And that subconscious formation then translates into a conscious formation of choosing different things to believe and not to believe based on the subconscious influences of culture. So we have culture. And then we have prejudice. Prejudice was what Hans Gadamer called is our prejudice is not something negative, but it is something that is there, that comes up through our Weltbild, through our subconscious, our conscious formation. It forms a standpoint, and that standpoint is our prejudice, how we view things. And so it's prejudging. That's what prejudice is built from Latin, is prejudging. And before you can judge, you have to have certain things lined up. You have to have a network or a schematic or a system of assumptions, of beliefs, and how you're going to apply them to be able to judge. And so that is what Gadamer called our prejudice, prejudging. And so that's what Stephen Jay Gould talked about, is culture and prejudice. Then we have theory. Theory is associated with methods and the development of looking out, because as we had learned in the previous lecture series, is that theory, coming from Greek, theorin, has actually the connotations of viewing, of a spectator, of viewing things, but again, through a grid, through viewing them through a position, from a position. So we have theory built on prejudice, which is built on culture, which then forms a habit of modeling out our culture, our prejudice, our theory in a habit, then forms a model of how we understand the world, and how we model an imitation of it, and how we model that model then interprets so that we can better understand the world. So those are the four concepts of Stephen Jay Gould. What we have here is the ground zero. We're starting now at ground zero, which is the 0 point below the house. The house has to sit on a foundation, not just a foundation. The house has to sit on a ground level, has to sit on something physical. And that is what we have. Ground zero is related to the Weltbild, or the Weltbild in English. The Weltbild, which is all life experiences, surrounding environment, the cultural tendencies. And in this project, what we're looking at is building a house off of Western cultural tendencies. And these are not everybody's tendencies that might be Western, but what it is it's an extreme Western, and what we're going to do then is counter it in the next series with a non-Western. But what we want to do is build a house based on a Western type of understanding, of looking at things. So what would be the characteristics of a Western cultural tendency? Well, that's what we have. One is the division of natural and supernatural. And that is a Western way of understanding the world, or dividing the world up, in that there is a natural world, and then it is separated by those two forward slashes or walls or bars from the belief in a supernatural. And so what that has done is allowed us to operate during the week thinking like as if we're in a natural world that is run by natural causes and natural effects. And the difference of that is that if we get an accident, or if we get sick, or whatever happens to us, we look for natural causes and natural remedies. Or not just natural remedies, but remedies that are from or within the natural system, natural world. That's our next point, is that part of the Western cultural tendencies is natural, supernatural, and dividing those up into two separate domains, where our non-Western side does not see it that way. They don't live in a natural world, if that means absent of all supernatural or spiritual or powers. They won't go there or do that. They say, no, we live in one world. It's a material world, yes, but it is also influenced by the spirit world. So they would not divide it. So this is a Western division of natural, supernatural division. So what we're going for here, building this house, is the undercurrent, the foundation, the build has this separation. And if we're building a house, like I did for a few years, is that you go to work thinking. You go to work logically. You go to work not thinking that you're battling a spiritual warfare, but that you're working within the natural system. And that natural system is a closed system. Closed system meaning that it is closed to outside interference. It's a system that is continuous. It is a system that is what the uniformitarian principle is based on, or what its principle is that it always was, it always will. It always is, always was, always will function in this way. So it's a closed system. And we adopt a closed system as Westerners for our extrapolation, our predictions, our looking at sciences. We look at things today and we extrapolate backwards using the same conditions and processes and speeds today, and then we can extrapolate forward. So we operate in a closed system that is continuous, which would be basically described by the uniformitarian principle. Okay, how are we as Westerners, and how do we operate? Well, we tend to be autonomous, and we tend to think that causes are autonomous, that there's one cause, specific cause, there is independence, there is things that just work on their own. That's a Western type of character trait within us also, and it's competitive. So a Western type of thinking is competitive in that we believe that if to get ahead in life, and that is the purpose, to get ahead, progressive is Western, is that we breed within us a competitive nature. Okay, so that is our foundation, that is our culture, that is what we're building on. So if we're building on those characteristics, we're building on those tendencies, the first question that comes up in the structure of our house is the foundation. And the foundational question, or the foundational real factor, is where do we get reliable knowledge from? Where do we go to? Is there reliable knowledge? And most of us would say yes, because we have to have something. So where does that reliable knowledge come from? Throughout, and that's kind of a philosophical question that has to do with epistemology. Epistemology has to do with knowledge, and what would be your epistemological source of knowledge? So what would be your source of reliable knowledge? For this house, would it be intuitive knowledge inside that involves feelings, that involves beliefs, involves a very personal perspective? Intuitive knowledge? Probably not. Authoritarian knowledge. Authoritarian knowledge receives knowledge from outside in. So the locus of authority is external. Probably not either, because that's a non-Western tendency trait. Okay, logical knowledge. Yes. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Logical knowledge. That's probably what, as a Westerner, we should. Now there's another option, empirical knowledge, and that's a close first second as to which one to choose. But actually what we're choosing is the primary source, not exclusive source. So our primary source of reliable knowledge, we're going to pick, as Westerners, logical knowledge. And logical knowledge is just based on the fact that we reason out through theorems, through equations, through logic. We put it together, excluding things that are contrary, negative, and then we build a system based on logical knowledge. But what that is logical humanism, humanistic knowledge within me. Okay, so now the source is not external, the source is internal, and the source is logical knowledge. Okay, so now we're going to build the foundation. We're going to put the foundation in place. What's it look like? Well, let's go over and look at it again in that we have one, internal human reason is the foundation. Internal human, okay, it's internal, it's not external. Authority, locus of authority. It's internal, it's based on human reason, logical knowledge as source, and it's a closed system. And that is based on the cultural tendencies of being a Western cultural tendency of two separate domains of the natural, supernatural. Okay. What we have here is there precedence for this choosing of this foundation? When you choose a foundation and you're choosing it based on internal human reason, logical knowledge, what you're doing is you are rejecting the other three sources of knowledge. You are rejecting intuition knowledge, intuitive knowledge. You're rejecting authoritarian knowledge. And inside authoritarian knowledge, it being external, includes revelation. So you're rejecting revelation as being a reliable source of knowledge. You're also rejecting empirical knowledge as being the primary source. What you're looking at is the primary source is reason. So is there any precedence for choosing a source of knowledge over other sources of knowledge, or starting with a source of knowledge? And that is what we have here, the story of philosophy by Brian McGee. He states, the first philosophers were making two great breaks with the past simultaneously. In the first place, they were trying to understand the world by use of their reason, without appealing to religion, revelation, authority, or tradition. Okay, so we do have our precedents. And what we're looking at is a Western concept, a Western view of building this house of reasoning, this house of thinking, and we're building it on human reason. And to build it on human reason, we are rejecting other sources as being reliable. And so what we have assumed as Western thinkers, a Western house, and where does Western come from? It comes from Greek philosophy, Western thinking. So what we have is the first philosophers were not totally Greek, they were Ionian, okay, but that is what formed the Greek basis of philosophy. So what we have is the first philosophers were making two great breaks with the past simultaneously. I didn't go over the second break. I'm just going over the first break. And it says in the first place, they were trying to understand the world by use of their reason without appealing to religion, revelation, or authority or tradition. Now, Greece was also the birthplace, or what's really known for its mythology and all its gods. And so what we have is one culture that is the source of all the Greek mythologies and the Greek gods. But at this time in history, there were some thinkers that said no more. No more mythology, no more Greek gods, no more tradition, no more revelation, no. Let's think for ourselves and see where we go with it. So that is the beginning of this house. The beginning of this house is with Western cultural perspective. and what that carries with it. And from the Western cultural perspective, from the Weltbild, then we go up into the foundation and we choose our foundational source, our source of reliable knowledge. And we have chosen our source as logic, logical knowledge, reason and logic as our source of reliable knowledge and what to build on from there up. Again, thank you for joining me. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. And if you'd like to contact us, you can do it through the blog, through the doubleroadrover.com, or directly through email, which is thn.academia@gmail.com. Again, thanks for accompanying me.